Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, Hush Blackwell, Barbara and Peter Gattermeyer, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly in our topics this week. Mayor Holland leaves office fighting with firefighters. The never-ending fight over school finance looms large in Kansas. And the most recent fight to ensure racial equity in Kansas City, Missouri, plus, of course, roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and focus on crime-fighting efforts in Jackson County, Missouri. Jean Peters Baker is the county prosecuting attorney appointed to the job in May 2011, first elected to it in November 2012. Jean Peter Baker's name is a familiar one to those who follow the news. Shows up in various stories dealing with homicides, jail issues, and efforts to combat crime. Jean Peters Baker is only the second woman to serve as Jackson County prosecutor. The first was Claire McCaskill. Things turned out pretty well for her. Madam Prosecutor, welcome to Ruckus. It's nice to meet you and thank you for coming in.
It is a pleasure to be here.
I made a list of topics to talk to you about, and it kept getting longer as the week went by. So let me try to consolidate the questions. The legislature and the county executive are battling over budget and staffing. Yeah. A battle's going on over who is supposed to run the combat program, you or the county executive or someone he appoints. Sheriff's office was called this week to quell a dispute in one of the finance offices. I guess the question is, how do you assess the state of county government? Is it dysfunctional at this point?
There's a fair amount of chaos at this moment. So I think what I would say is I pray that our county exec went home last night, got a good night's sleep, and is ready to come back to the office today, willing to talk to other branches of government.
Do you think the problem rests with the county executive, Frank White?
I think he is creating a whole lot of the chaos that is happening. So this has been building for a while. It's not just a problem that creeped up overnight. It's been building and has culminated in the county executive deeming all of the actions, or the ones he chooses, the actions he has chosen of the Jackson County legislature just don't matter, and he doesn't have to follow their rule of law. So that creates a lot of instability and chaos. I'm in the middle of that, like many other county employees, just really caught in the middle, trying to figure out what to do.
Making your job more difficult?
There's no doubt about it, making it a lot more difficult. So,
do you think it's due to Mr. White's inexperience in county government?
It may be that. It may be that he has a misunderstanding of how branches of government work. You know, the legislature, the Jackson County legislature passes ordinances. When they pass, you know, we have to recognize them. There's another mechanism. If you disagree with them, you go to court and you allow a judge to step in and take a look.
Yeah.
That's our
co-equal branches of government.
Yes.
Yes, kind of a familiar concept in America.
Yes.
Well, I have to move on to some other areas. There's a lot of talk about the high homicide rate in 2017. Yes. I'm sure you think about it a lot. 149 compared with 82 in 2014, just 3 years earlier. Why do you think it is that the rate went up in Kansas City last year when similar sized and larger cities saw their homicide rates declining?
Well, there's, I think, several reasons for that, but I would say Kansas City is not alone. There are many cities that are of comparable size, some a little larger, some a little smaller, that have had the same experience of this higher than the year before homicide rate. Baltimore has had a terrific problem as well. St. Louis has had a terrific problem, among other cities. I don't know that there's a singular answer for that, and I think anybody that comes to you with a simple solution, all of us should be suspect of.
And there are some homicides that can't be predicted, it would seem to me. Some are the result of emotional conflict that nobody can predict. What about the Jackson County Jail? Is there any doubt in your mind that there is the need for a new one?
There is not doubt in my mind that there is need for a new facility. And the current facility, though, to receive the same kind of attention, some of these other disputes you talked about, that jail needs that same kind of attention.
Why did you decide not to serve on the committee that's looking at a new jail or looking at what to do about the current jail? This
committee was to study whether or not there's a problem. Is there a problem? Mike, we're
you know there's
that.
A problem, right?
Let's just stop with that nonsense. The committee I think there can be a committee that takes a look at issues and really digs into them. But to halt progress on this current facility because we need more study it's just a completely unacceptable answer. We need to move now.
Do you have any interest in following the path of your predecessor, Ms. McCaskill? Look for higher political office at some point?
I think I'm very happy to be the Jackson County prosecutor. In fact, not just happy, I'm proud to be the Jackson County prosecutor. And so that's my job, and that's where I will remain.
I appreciate you coming in. I wish we had more time to talk. Maybe you'll come back another time and we can talk some more.
Perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Jackson County Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Steve Rose is a columnist with the Kansas City Star. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Urban League in Kansas City. John Stevens is head of Rock Hill Strategic, and Denidre Herbert is managing editor of the Sentinel, a conservative website. 2 Missourians, 2 Kansans, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 2 men, 2 women. Should be a fair fight. Let's get started. It was quite a finale for outgoing KCK Mayor Mark Holland, accusing the fire department he supervised of corruption. The issue involved is called shift trading, and according to Holland, allows some firefighters to be paid for work they don't do and costs the city an extra $1 million annually. Holland called a special county commission meeting last Thursday, robo-called citizens, telling them to watch on the city's TV channel. But the meeting never aired. Not enough commission members showed up to make the session official. That might have been because they were ill or had other commitments, or it could have been because Holland lost the November election to David Alvey. Alvey was supported by the Firefighters Union, a major reason for his victory. Alvey was sworn in Monday, so what happens now? Does the shift trade issue die, John?
No, I don't think the discussion does, but I do think that it switches to what it really is, which is less of an explosive issue and more of a policy, a union contract issue, and a discussion that is best handled by the professional staff at the unified government to work through what needs to be done to make sure that staff is doing what they need to be doing to protect the citizens of the county.
Well, do you think Alvey will be incentivized to look into this when the Firefighters Union supported him in a huge way and may be mainly responsible for his success?
Well,
and he says it's not a big deal anyway.
No, but I think, I think as you look at any union contract, any staffing issue like that's a professional staff.
Denidre, your website wrote about this. What did you conclude?
Well, I was surprised to read, and I think he told a television station this. Bob Wing, who's one of the firefighter reps for the union, said that they were working under agreed upon rules. Right. So we're talking, yes, about policy. Yeah. There is a moral issue there. You shouldn't be paying people for work that they're not doing. But it's been politicized. I mean, I don't think there's any question to anybody who watched that election that Alvey was elected specifically because the firefighters, I mean, they went to bat for him. Huge.
But certainly the inflammatory terminology and the things used, I think.
Hopefully that will even out a bit.
And the possible threats to Holland in the last few days of his administration. Right. Gwen, you remember when Kansas City, Kansas had a horrible reputation, and then things seemed to change after consolidation 20 years ago. Do you think this harms the city's reputation, this kind of a battle?
Well, I think it does. I understand that you can couch this as a policy issue, but to have spent nearly $1 million in wages and people did not work should be of huge concern to the taxpayers in Wyandotte County and the county and the mayor of the unified government. And so, unfortunately, though, I don't think Alvy's going to raise the issue because it's been politicized and he has the support of the union. But it certainly casts a cloud over the unified government as far as I'm concerned. It says, are we going to sit here in this state that also has a problem with transparency and allow this type of practice to ensue? They should be concerned.
It's been going on for years under various administrations
and it needs to be fixed
other
because
fire
the light has been
and other fire
too.
departments. But let me ask Steve this: does shift trading go on in Johnson County and the various fire departments there?
Yes. However, there's no money that transacts. Here's the way it works. One, they get approval from the brigade commander, the battalion commander. Two, they have to shift with someone of equal rank, so that's a difference in policy. And third, they have to make up each other's shift. So if I'm giving you an opportunity to work in my shift, then I have to turn around and work in your shift. No dollars change hands, and that's the way it should be.
And that issue of rank seems to be important. Responsibilities you would have on the job, would it not?
Absolutely. I mean, if it's going to be a policy, it should be a policy that makes sense.
Yeah. And it should be managed
and that is
appropriately.
right. And this is the one they've got is kind of obscene.
It doesn't seem like it should be a hard fix. I mean, if you go to any McDonald's probably in the greater Kansas City area, those workers probably are able to trade shifts and it doesn't turn into $1 million.
You've got to verify that the actual trading is taking
that's just
place.
What I'm saying. Like, it shouldn't be hard.
Right. And I think that takes me back to, I think
it.
Steve is exactly right. I think you have to look at best practices. You look at what other municipalities have had success and failures with, and you codify that.
What's going to change under the Alvey administration in terms of broad perspectives?
I don't know. I honestly don't know that we'll see dramatic changes. I think we've seen thus far in his intros and interviews that he's a very consistent, kind of stable leader. I think he wants to move forward and focus on a lot of urban redevelopment and a lot a of programs that I think really benefit.
He's not so high on TIF projects that are big stores, big projects, big raceways. Yeah. He's more interested in downtown and the east side. At least that's what he says.
Yeah, I would say definitely. I think committing to a broader base of citizens and looking at the return on investment of those incentives. I don't think there's a negativity towards incentives. It's looking at how do you quantify that.
East side development is easier said than done in Kansas City, Kansas.
That's true in every city.
In every city. All right. Well, probably not true in every city. An invitation-only event sponsored by Mayor James, the Kauffman Foundation, and the Kansas City School District marked the apparent beginning of yet another effort designed to improve race relations. It's called The Truth Project, a racial equity workshop. The two-day event was conducted by a North Carolina organization. The purpose was defined in part as helping people become clear on how race and racism have been constructed and how ideas about racism live in our unconscious minds and social structures even 50 years after the successes of the civil rights movement. Well, that sounds like a worthy goal, but Gwen, is there any chance it's going to be realized or benefited by this seminar?
Well, I certainly hope so. Anytime.
Were you there?
I was.
Surely you got an invitation.
Yes, I did.
I figured you would.
Well, anytime you can have dialogue and education that provides an opportunity for people across racial lines to talk about our history, to talk about the systems that are in place, to talk about the disparities that are persistent and pervasive that impact the lives of African Americans and other people of color, with the goal of moving towards progress, is a good thing. And so these gatherings, I did have the opportunity to participate in one of them. The one I participated in was very productive. It was very informative and sets the stage for doing more work. Now, certainly naysayers would say, well, we've had lots of dialogue and we haven't seen change. Well, I would say that, we have seen change. We may not have seen the amount of change that we want to see, but we certainly won't get to any degree of progress without confronting issues, without having some dialogue.
And I would say there
are
those who don't acknowledge how much change there has been.
that could be the case.
What do you think, Denitra? Do you think these are worthwhile events?
No, they may have been. I hate to say no. I think there's some value, but I think it's of limited value. There has been massive change, even in my lifetime, but I don't think that that's been the result of dialogues. It's been the result of actual cultural change that doesn't start from my dad's black and my mom's white, and we don't sit around and talk about it all the time.
You have to have conversation about it. You have to confront the issues to even get someone to a place of wanting to achieve change.
People that I don't know did things to people that you don't know decades ago, long before I was born, and all we're doing is bringing up old hurts when what we should be doing is just going to dinner, with friends.
Therein lies a huge fallacy and a huge
and John
disconnect.
And Steve personally working to bridge those color lines on our own personally. I don't want people to look at me and think about all of my ancestors.
Well, I do, because I'm proud of my ancestry.
Okay, hang on,
and I do want people to look at me and
I'm glad I'm not in this topic.
I do want people
to
therein lies the problem. We want to forget or to the past, and we can't.
I don't want anybody
I'm
to look
talking
at me
now,
and
Denitra.
think
So
that
I do want you. I do want you to look at me and to know my history and to know my past and the stories of my ancestry and how that helped to form this country, to build the systems and structures that exist in this country, and the role that we played in doing it. And it's not all negative.
Now let me get Steve Rose in here. Is this kind of racial equity question a concern in Johnson County and elsewhere in Metro Kansas City, or is it just in Kansas City, Missouri?
It's a concern in every place in the United States.
Well, do you have dialogue?
Well, I think yes, there's a lot of dialogue, but I'll say this, that the seminar made an issue about unconscious racism, and I say, you don't even need to go to the unconscious. There's plenty of conscious out there.
That's true.
And you'll find it in Johnson County, and absolutely. The minority population, as you well know, in Johnson County is very, very small. But it's changing. It is changing. It's becoming more diverse in many ways, not just people of all colors. And I think that's a great thing, and we've made a lot of progress in that direction.
John, I don't want you to be ignored. What does the NAACP's battle with the Westport merchants tell us about the state of racial relations in Kansas City?
Well, one, I think that is a, first and foremost, yes, there is a major race component there, but that is a constitutional issue that goes above and beyond, and there is a major problem there.
What's the question?
Is seated
what's the constitutional question?
Well, the constitutional question is, should we be ceding public right-of-way and public space and the freedoms associated with public space to a private business entity? That's a serious problem that we
for the purpose of public safety.
Well, for the purpose of public safety, but also stripping away potential rights of citizens within that public space.
Got to stop you there. Next week, our interview segment will feature the head of the NAACP in Kansas City, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the Westport situation and other matters.
Good.
All right, as the Kansas legislature reconvened and Governor Brownback delivered his final State of the State address, Steve Rose was warning his fellow residents to be wary of duplicitous conservative legislators. Steve thinks they're planning a special April election to offer a constitutional amendment that, if passed, would block the state Supreme Court from closing schools. But Rose says the real purpose is to allow legislators to ignore court rulings mandating more money for K-12 education. So, Steve, on a scale from 1 to 10, how worried are you about this? So 1 means not worried, 10 means
I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter what the 1 or 10 means, because I'm going to say 5.
Or is it 600?
I'm going to say 5. That way I'm covered. I think this is a real plot to take away the authority of the Supreme Court to close schools. If you take that authority away, then no matter what the court has to say, the legislature is going to say, thank you very much, we like your opinion, now we're going to go do what we want to do. Interestingly, too, I want to point out that there's a poll, supposed poll, in which the Sentinel had a story about this. 59% of the people are supposed to be in favor of the idea that the Supreme Court should not be able to close. But the question when you get down into the poll was, should people have the opportunity to vote on that issue? Completely different question, and you would get a completely different answer.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Denitra, how worried are you about this possible constitutional amendment?
0, and that's only because I am very cognizant of the makeup of the legislature, and there's a tall hill to climb to even get that on the ballot, and I don't think it's. I wish it was likely, but I don't see that happening. I don't see them getting 2/3 majorities in both houses. And then even if they do, I think the fight to pass such an amendment would be brutal and bloody, and I'm not sure the side of reason would win.
Yeah, to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in Kansas, you have to have 2/3 of each house approve it, and then a vote.
A majority.
Where you get 2/3.
A majority is
majority
only in the public vote.
Statewide majority.
Voters. But there was an effort to oust the judges on the state Supreme Court last November, and that failed completely.
I'm not sure this issue. I do think if what was on the ballot was a constitutional amendment that said judges don't have the authority to close schools, I think that would pass. Although that's already in state statute, and
of course,
it's never been tested.
The governor, solved everything with a wave of his hand. To the state, he said, "Oh, let's throw $600 million into this."
He created $600 million.
We were going to talk about Governor Brownback, more about his state of the state, but I think we're going to have to, because of late-breaking news developments, talk about the governor of Missouri, Eric Greitens, who gave his state of the state address, but nobody seems to care because of the news about his admission that he was involved in an extramarital affair and accused of trying to blackmail the young lady with whom he was involved. You've been talking about this all morning, Steve, off the air. What exactly do we think happened?
Oh, well, all I know is what I read, so I don't know what happened beyond that, but if you believe what we're reading, yes, he had an affair with his hairdresser. And not just a one-night issue, but it was a ongoing relationship. But at the very beginning of the relationship, apparently he for a reason, he had a blindfold on her. And I'm not sure.
He has a photograph of her.
And he has a photograph of her half naked.
And people are alleging that he was going to be able to blackmail her if she ever talked about it.
He said, if you ever say anything, this picture is going to be disseminated.
And his wife and he came forward with a statement where she's understanding of this whole situation and they've reunited. Now, here's my real question. Will voters care in 2018? This wasn't apparently a sexual harassment case. The affair was apparently consensual.
I don't know that voters will care about the acknowledged affair. I think what voters will care about is what comes out over the coming days, weeks, months related to this or other activities that may or may not have occurred. I also think voters will care. The other thing that we forget is Governor Greitens spent last year making 0 friends on either side of the aisle in the legislature. And he was already going to have a tough hill to climb to pass his agenda. And with this hanging over his head, right now, looking at it today, I would say his any agenda, which he still hasn't released his proposed budget, is dead on arrival in the legislature.
But obviously, he's not incapable of making friends, just non-politician friends.
He's dead.
Very special kind of friend.
He killed it.
We got it. We're going to head now to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to celebrate or incinerate people and events in the news, and we start with John.
I'd like to give a toast to Children's Mercy Hospital, the Hall Family Foundation, and the Sunderland Foundation for committing $150 million towards a $200 million research center on the Children's Mercy campus that I think sets the stage for decades of advancement to help children, families, and to help grow our community.
Steve.
Well, I keep thinking my last roast of Sam Brownback, the governor, is the last one, but he doesn't seem to go away, and that's why I'm roasting him, because he's really hurting his Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Collier. Jeff has a very low name identification in the state, and he needs to compete with Chris Kobach, who has a very high, and I don't know why he stole the state of the state from Collier. He should resign and give Collier a chance.
Denidre.
Well, I want to offer a toast to Paul Craig, who is an Olathe gentleman, a middle-class guy who runs Polly's Penguins Playground in Olathe every year. He opens his backyard with thousands of inflatables to families and the community. They come to his backyard. It's free, but he takes donations, and this was his 10th year. He gives it to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. This year, his total amount of donations has been $47,000. So a toast to Paul Craig, who is doing this on his own as a community service.
What was the name of it?
Polly's Penguins Playground, I believe. It's
Say
just
that 3 times.
It's just a backyard filled with inflatables.
I want directions after the show.
Okay.
Gwen.
So I'm toasting KCI officials and Iceland Air for bringing the international flights to Reykjavik to KCI. Going to see the Northern Lights is on my bucket list. Here I come.
Right.
When you go, maybe you'll see some penguins there.
Maybe so.
All right. Well, as we say goodnight, the staff here at KCPT is mourning the loss of a respected colleague, Mike McGraw, a special projects reporter for Kansas City PBS. He passed away on January the 6th after a brief battle with cancer. Mike was a prominent investigative journalist, earning the Pulitzer Prize for a series on the U.S. Department of Agriculture during his 30-year career at the Kansas City Star. He joined KCPT in 2014, covering everything from the city's infrastructure to his own experiences with the Vietnam Draft Lottery. Mike was a dedicated and courageous reporter who sought to expose the truth. The folks here and I will miss him, his warmth, and his wisdom. And so that is Ruckus for this week. The Ruckettes return next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.